Hello everyone, this is Reporters, the programme that brings you stories from France 24's best journalists around the world. I'm Jeannie Godula. Over the centuries, the wars of religion have rocked much of England. But today, a new religious war is bubbling away in the UK, for or against Sharia law. Sharia, of course, is the law that governs a Muslim's life based on the Quran, and it's often seen as violent and oppressive to women. In the past few months, a group called the English Defence League has been on the rise. They say they're not racist, they just want to fight extremism. And yet their, quote, peaceful protests often become violent and they hide their faces behind makeshift burqas all the while. At the other extreme, a Muslim lawyer named Anjem Choudhury. He's hoping Sharia law will one day rule Britannia entirely. Kate Williams and James Andre met with these two groups on the fringes of British society. Kate will be giving us some insight into the conflict in just a few minutes' time. But first, here's her special report.
Somewhere in the back streets of Luton, we have a meeting with the English Defence League, an organisation that's declared war on extreme Islam in Britain. There's no exact address, but we're taken to a disused warehouse, where we talk to Tommy and some of his fellow members. This is the EDL's HQ, where banners have been prepared for the following day's protest. Members are also wearing what they call burqas, partly to protest, partly to protect their identities for fear of reprisals. The EDL was only formed a few months ago, but they've already held several protests, some of which have turned into mass fights.
It seems to us, by looking at it, the only way people get listened to in this country is by blowing things up. Since 4 Muslims blew themselves up, the British government have just pumped complete millions into the Muslim communities. Millions. They've funded them in every way possible, and the reason is because they blew things up. Now, we're not going to be prepared to do anything like that, but we are prepared to take to the streets in mass numbers whenever we can, over whatever we need to, and peacefully protest.
Despite accusations to the contrary, members of the English Defence League insist they're not violent or racist.
None of us are racist. How can you be a racist in 2010? You'd have to be living in the dark ages to actually treat someone differently because of the colour of their skin. Ridiculous. Outrageous notion.
Sharia for Europe! Sharia for Europe!
This is some of the Islamist extremism the EDL is determined to stop. With freedom of speech enshrined so fiercely in the British psyche, some people are pushing it to the limit, such as Anjem Choudhury, seen here converting an 11-year-old to Islam one Saturday morning.
That there is no one worthy of worship except Allah, and I bear testimony that Muhammad is his messenger. Islam is a way of life.
We met Choudhury as he gave a press conference on the eve of the EDL protest, announcing a counter-demonstration in London on the same day. On the walls are images of Buckingham Palace redesigned as a mosque, a sign of how his followers see the future. But Choudhury refuses to give the exact location of his march for Sharia, citing security worries.
People are openly saying that they're going to confront us, and some people say they're going to kill us and bomb us.
Choudhury and his disciples run the Islam for UK website, which calls for Sharia law to be imposed across Europe. They believe Queen Elizabeth should convert to Islam and wear a veil, while the monarchy would be abolished altogether.
The Queen, she will not really be a person having any kind of authority under the Sharia.
The following day, there was no more information from Choudhury. London's Metropolitan Police says his protest did not go ahead. As for the EDL, they did make their way to Leeds for their demonstration, meaning an early start for the Luton division. Up north in Leeds, the city is under heavy surveillance. Hundreds of police officers have been drafted in from across the region to keep order. EDL divisions from all over the country meet up at the railway station. Their protests are always timed to coincide with football matches to maximise turnout. When the coach from Luton finally arrives, the protesters are raring to go, waiting for Tommy and his fellow crusaders to get the show on the road.
We want our country back! We want our country back!
900 people have turned up, and Tommy plays them a controversial speech by the British Minister for Community Cohesion, Shahid Malik, a Muslim.
And I'm confident, as Britain's first Muslim minister, that inshallah in the next 30 years or so we'll see a Prime Minister in this country who happens to share my faith.
The EDL has demanded his resignation. Meanwhile, Tommy whips up the crowd.
Within 3 to 4 months, we have 20,000, 30,000 people marching in our capital to show the country that we have had enough of Islamic extremists who fund terrorism in our country. Get them out of our universities, get them out of our colleges, and get them off our street corners, because we're not going to put up with it anymore.
The EDL is keen to show they have members from all races. Tommy himself is wearing an Israeli flag in testament to his anti-racist stance. But not all protesters have the same principles. With many protesters recruited in the pub on match day, things come close to getting out of hand, despite the efforts of the EDL's leaders.
I hate any or who prefers to bomb somebody than buy him a beer. End of.
Yeah, and we do need some beer.
Yeah, fair play.
We do need some beer.
Unlike protests elsewhere in the country, Muslims in Leeds do stay away at the request of the police and local imams. Despite popular misconceptions, the EDL tries to distance itself from right-wing groups such as the British National Party. But in reality, many EDL supporters do vote for the BNP and its leader, Nick Griffin.
Nick Griffin is a legend. Put that on telly and all. Nick Griffin. Go on, Nick. You know what I mean? We all love Nick.
We want our country back.
Not everyone in EDL is a BNP, but I vote BNP. You know what I mean? I think the rest of Britain, if they want to sort the country out, you should vote BNP. So yous out there, right, start voting BNP and sort your lives out, yeah? You know what I mean?
A few hundred metres away, a counter-protest is being held by Unite Against Fascism, a government-funded group. But the heavy police presence stops violence flaring between the two. At the end of the day, there have been just 9 arrests and no serious injuries. Yet the rise of the EDL is starting to worry leaders of the extreme right. We caught up with Nick Griffin, leader of the BNP. He's on his way to Brussels, having been elected the BNP's first member of the European Parliament in June. A controversial figure in the UK, he's at pains to show his party has no link with the EDL.
If they spark off serious trouble, then we'll get the blame, from the police, from the state and the media, but also from ordinary people who don't want to see that kind of trouble. The British National Party prescribed the EDL. It's a disciplinary offence for our members to be part of it or attend its activities. It has the potential to grow enormously, but I think more likely it's got the potential to spark a very serious riot and all sorts of problems which really no one in their right minds wants to see.
But it can't be denied the extreme right is enjoying a wave of publicity in the UK. Their current popularity is largely down to the Islamist message being spread by people like Anjem Chowdhury. When he's not holding protests calling for Sharia law in the UK, Chowdhury teaches up and down the country with the London School of Sharia. The classroom is split in half.